But it's like starting with the basis of like, look, identify the things that you can control and manipulate, understand the tools that you're using to do that, and then have an intention when you're using that tool to build up that aspect of your client's athleticism. But it's, it's the neon pants and the gray Under Armour sweat, or however that wardrobe has played out over the last hour, is like, it's just turns into a muddled grab bag. And it's so funny because it's not funny, but I find it funny. I was in the gym earlier today with a friend of mine who's like relatively new to the gym. And we're kind of looking around and he's like, dude, how much of this could be done better? And I was like, well, better's tough, right? Because it's small hinges open big doors. And I think there's every single person in here from a technical perspective, we could probably manipulate and drive adaptation quicker. And it is wild when you start to, and the combine and the level 3 and having a competition date in athletics, I think is something that is really useful. And especially when that's taken away, I think a lot of the utility in athletic training goes away. As you kind of talked about the idea of like, look, the outcome is very nebulous. The goal is very nebulous. But if you can start to discern the specifics of every exercise and the intention behind every exercise and the desired adaptation of every exercise, dude, you can make progress so fucking quickly. It's insane, man. You picked up running and then like within like, hey, 2 months, yo, bro, I just ran off like a 4.740. And I was like, what? Weren't you doing like box jumps like last week? Like, what did you, what do we mean? But it's like, it's if you can understand, it's the same with physique adaptation, right? Like we have trainers and coaches that work with us in the physique adaptation space. Like James McIntosh is obviously, he's our guy when it comes to that and contest prep. But if you can understand like, resistance profile, strength curve, nutrition, nutrient timing, supplementation, interaction, synergistic effects, sleep science, and all that, it's like, dude, it doesn't take that long. And I would argue at the very least, the ability to get a client to start pushing their potential, if you can understand these principles and apply these principles effectively, it's like taking a giant plane on a runway, to sample your runway progression idea just a little bit. But then it's like, okay, what if you don't have a runway anymore? That's, I don't know, to 20,000 feet. But what if your runway's 300 feet and you're on the fucking SS Minnow Johnson or whatever in the middle of the fucking ocean and you got to get this fighter jet? What if you got 8 weeks? What if you got 8 weeks to get this guy ready? It's like, oh shit. Now I'm actually going to go into the weeds and I'm going to look at the specifics and discern the intentionality. And all of a sudden, guess what? In 8 weeks, you got someone. It's like, well, if you have that constraint of time, you should always have the urgency to discern the stimulus you're trying to evoke and the adaptation you're trying to get your body to respond to. But you got to understand the base principles. You also have to understand the starting point of the athlete you're working with.
Yeah. And I think that's where, like, we talked about force velocity in this podcast. We've talked about general physical preparedness being speed, strength, endurance. We've talked about the ability to absorb, transfer, produce. And like, these are all things for coaches, for trainers, for people like that they want to do it with themselves. Like you said, it's like giving yourself a very distinct timeline is incredibly important because it allows you to start making these kind of like Air Force One decisions where you're like, well, where's the hole in the plot? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Gary Oldman was the waiter. And it's like, well, fuck, that's why Harrison Ford's the president. So I think it's like with even like you referenced myself, like, I started jumping in the basement of this old folks home and I started sprinting. What I was able to do was go through GPP. And I was like, all right, well, do I have the preparedness to do a track and field meet at 31 years old after not doing track since high school? Am I relatively strong? Yes, I am. In comparison to what you need to be strength-wise to sprint, pretty fucking strong in a lineup of sprinters. So I was like, why am I wasting sessions on getting strong? I need to take the relative strength I have. I need to take that strength and put it on the force velocity curve and go, is the strength I have, like you said, with a powerlifter who trains 2 submaximally, am I able to express the quality of strength along the force velocity curve in a way that benefits my running? No, because I lift really fucking slow. So I was like, okay, well now training above 80 doesn't serve me anymore in my training. I can take the same movements, but now I need to understand how they fit on the force velocity curve. I stopped squatting so much. There's nothing wrong with squatting, but squatting was this eccentrically dominant force absorption to transfer side of the curve. And I was like, well, I don't need that. I can yield to a shit ton of force. I can't produce anything. So I went into the other side. I went to concentric dominant movements, deadlifts, broad jumps, not even really box jumps at first. I just looked at things that benefit this concentric side and this ability to produce force, get on the other side of my feet. And then endurance. Dude, did I have the ability to run 100 meters? No. The first time I tried to run 100, I got like 60 meters in. I was like, Jesus Christ, how far is it again? And it beat the shit out of me. It's like, well, I need endurance. And I broke my toe. And the thing I always reference to people is where I saw the immediate difference in my performance on the track was, like you had mentioned, dude, the Airdyne bike, the assault bike. I hit 100 calories as fast as I could every day on the assault bike. My performance at the track increased tremendously. It had nothing to do with running. It was simply building the endurance engine that I needed to fit all the speed work into, because I had the strength to put force into the track. But after 15 meters, it didn't go anywhere. So, being able to audit somebody and go, we have the relative strength. Why are we fucking around with strength still? Maybe you even have the relative endurance. And it's like, well, why am I gassing my athlete out on the assault bike? I don't need to. And it's like, maybe we just need to work at velo. Then why are we even running 60 meters? Like, this guy just needs 10s, 20s, 30s, needs to put a sled behind him, work on speed strength, and we're out the door. So I think being able to break down performance into, like what we said, speed, strength, endurance, absorption, transfer, production, center of mass, and then velocity versus max strength, eccentric versus concentric qualities. And if you as a coach can use those filters, like we've said before, to find your Airbnb, you probably won't end up in Brixton with chubby like I did.
Blast story in itself. And I think, look, there's a lot of parallels to the type of filtering criteria we use in hypertrophy. It's just people need to update, like, we use the Airbnb analogy of, using specific criteria fields to narrow our searches and narrow our exercises, right? Like geolocation is such a big one, right? Because you don't end up with Brixton and Chubby, and, God forbid, hopefully no one got stabbed that weekend, which is not something we could say every weekend. But when we look at athletics, as we commonly refer to it as, it's as if you go from, searching for an Airbnb with certain criteria to, I don't know, maybe putting together a vehicle on the internet, or navigating Instacart. It's like, okay, there's a different interface here, right? We're dealing with different variables. A lot of people are trying to, like, order on Instacart, and it's like, I'd like to have Wi-Fi. It's like, no. This is where you get your groceries. It's like, air conditioning. What about parking on site? Laundry on site? It's like, no, like, we sell bananas, sir. Like, this is the wrong place for that. But they just, it's hard to break the user interface of hypertrophy because it's where a lot of us come up in. So even from a language perspective, like, if you're looking to get into athletics, if you're looking to be in a weight room, if you're looking to, whether collegiate or pro or private, or even have your clients have a meaningful response to the type of training so that they can prepare for whatever it is they prepare for, you need to start with the language, or you need to start with the user interface of the application that you're dealing with. Like, and some of the terms, we kind of race through them quick. We have a familiarity in both theory and application of these terms, but I would start there. Like, if anyone's taken the level 1, the first thing we do is we talk about language. Right? Language is huge. Your nomenclature, your vernacular, your Rolodex, your lexicon, the words you speak to your clients, and as those translate into exercise that you choose for your clients. Intentionality is lost if you don't understand what the fucking words mean, right? Like, if I were to try and read Shakespeare in iambic pentameter and emphasize and act out, a play, it's like, well, if I don't understand ye ought not, therefore else thou shall, whatever, it's like, well, how can I add intention or emotion to that if I don't actually understand what the words mean? It's the same thing. Starts with language. So it's like, get read, get fed. And it's like, I think hopefully if you got lost at any point in this, write the word down that you don't understand, right? Go to YouTube, look it up. Go to fucking, go to ChatGPT, have it explain it to you. Google search it again. Send us a voice note or whatever. And then you can go through and be like, oh, okay, now you're at a building block as a coach to really understand, what does this look like at the end goal when we've stimulated, respond, and adapt at the level of the client? What is it that we're actually trying to do? Because I think so many people just don't even understand some of the base level nomenclature, and that's where you start. I think language is super important